Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 53 of the Titanforge podcast. My name is Dratnos, joined by Tettles.
Hello, Dratnos.
And
Thank you
Trell.
for joining me.
Hello.
My name is Trell.
All right, I gestured in directions that you guys definitely weren't in, but welcome anyways. This week on our show, we are going to discuss a video that I made recently and a video that Tettles made recently and the topics around them. So the video that I made was about the Dream Mythic Plus expansion and like the changes that I'd make at a broad level to Mythic Plus. And the video that Tettles made was about Tyrannical versus Fortified. And the two have a lot of overlap there because there's definitely, Tyrannical versus Fortified is something that we complain about a great deal and that we discuss about a great deal as well. So we'll have all of our thoughts on all of those topics and perhaps slightly more as our main topic this week. But first, let's talk a little bit about this week, which many thought looked like a pretty bad week, and yet Now's team has just passed 6,000 Raider IO points with some ridiculous keystones timed, such as a 27 King's Rest on Fortified Grievous.
So do you think that this is in part due to the fact that the corruption vendor has finally finished its first cycle all the way through, and then also in part due to the fact that basically from every fortified week to the next fortified week, you're getting 6 corruption resist, which allows you to completely redo your corruption budget for 5 more corruption per dungeon, which for most classes is about 1,000 DPS gained.
Yeah, I think that has a huge amount to do with it.
I think both those things are massive. Like every 4 weeks a push week until the really, really good one when everybody can't possibly get stronger except for 3 corruption.
Right. I think next time we get back to Bursting Volcanic, if the first 30 hasn't been done yet by then, it'll be done that week, and then people will probably not be playing. Next time we get back to this week's Affix combo, I don't think people are going to beat what they did on the push week 4 weeks before now, right? Or
you think that the vendors artificially inflating how quickly people are able to push past what is statistically supposed to be a significantly better week?
Yeah, I think that right now, 4 weeks ago, the difference between 4 weeks ago and now is more than just 12 corruption resist. It's
yes.
Everybody's got their BIS corruption on their BIS items now, and that's a big difference. But
sure,
next time we get back, it will just be a 12 corruption resistance difference, and I don't think that will make up for the difference between Bursting Volcanic and Bolstering Grievous.
I do also believe that there will be a 30 done.
Yeah, I think it will be done by then.
Oh, definitely.
To me, the question that's interesting is, will it be done before then? Because I could see it getting done on, Sanguine Quaking, the 2 weeks before Bursting Volcanic, perhaps.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh man, it's going to be rough, too, because it's going to be that now Zamok team, probably, right?
Yeah, they are certainly far in the lead right now on that race.
Because Andy... I guess their team called it quits, according to Twitter. And then Nerf is having a kid, and his wife's due date is sometime this week. So it's he's not going to be around. He said that he's going to push again the last push week of the season. But yeah, he's going to be busy with life.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, there are a lot of good players that are not on the now Zamok Jinji Dream Team, but... though it's tough to imagine getting a new team together or whatever and then challenging them instead of being a pre-existing team.
Maybe Bear Squad?
Maybe Bear Squad can do it.
There's always wild cards out there too.
Finn's team is also very good.
Or just Andy with some new players next, around him, or Ellesmere with some new players around him in NA.
Toward the end of each season, I always see an Asian conglomerate team of several good players from several different MDI teams. They band together and they usually do the highest key of the season randomly.
Pet dog.
Yeah.
That team could potentially do it as well. There's just there's always some people out there, not always just the top 3 tanks.
Okay, and something that we always overlook a little bit because they're not tracked on Raider IO, the Chinese team's always most of the time in the season with the highest keys done, I think.
Exactly, yeah. It's actually really funny.
I don't even know why it happens, but they could get the first 30.
Yeah, they got the first 26 in season 3, right?
Yeah, they got the first 26 in season 3. That was the Toldagor.
Yeah. I remember seeing the VOD of that and just being I had no idea this was happening.
And I feel like a lot of people kind of discredited that because it didn't show up on Raider.io.
Yeah, people always like talk about as well. They don't have different loot rules than us anymore either. Like they're out there gaming essentially the same game with like slightly different client. So, yeah.
They have this. Yes, they have like very structured the exact same game. The only difference is like some of their texture models have to be different to comply with Chinese laws and regulations. But beyond that, the loot rules are the exact same. The only difference is that I think they start their resets like 36 hours
Thursday.
after NA. Yeah, after NA reset or something like that. But
which is more of a disadvantage than an advantage, if anything.
I would say that I would almost classify that as an advantage.
Okay, I guess if you're thinking about
for Mythic Plus,
yeah,
specifically.
But I mean, the question is like how much, like I guess you're saying there's like 36 hours of them being able to like watch teams in the other regions, and then they get 36 more hours at the end of their reset to keep going in the good week. Yep. Maybe, yeah,
because it's not like a race, right?
Yeah. But although it might be the next push week, the next time we got back to Bursting Volcanic, if the first 30 isn't done, it might be done pretty early into that reset.
Yeah, if you're racing for the first 30, then yes, sure.
Yeah, of course that race to 6K has already been taken care of. The question is now how high score can people get? Is 6.5 going to be possible for like Gingy and now and such, or I think probably so. I think 6.5 and 130 is about the same thing, right?
It depends on how many more weeks are on in the expansion, right? So, I don't know. Let's say that there's 15 more weeks in the expansion. You're able to get 45 more corruption resistance. That is or like what is 125? Like 125 is the maximum.
Yeah, that's another 40 corruption resistance from here.
People are at 86, right? Yeah,
so 39 more resist.
That's a big deal.
That is
39 more resist is a lot of corruption that you're adding to your character.
It's huge.
Although it's kind of unclear what hunters are supposed to do, because we've only got 10 more useful corruption we can add, and then the next 20 would go to like not having a thing from beyond, or we'd swap in like
Racing Pulse
instead of an expedient or something.
It's Racing Pulse. That's supposed to be the best one. You can also technically play an Ineffable Truth too. It's probably not that bad.
Yeah, Hunter definitely an interesting thing. All three of us have been playing a little bit of Hunter. Trell Hunter has made his way up to 4K.
Yeah, leisurely.
Petals has advanced to 4.8.
And Dratnos is fucking flaming me over this, by the way.
What? I haven't said anything since
Dratnos saved his for last. I don't know why.
He tweeted at me the other night. It was like, just gaming with my friends, smiley face. And he was in 11th and I was in 13th. And he cropped out the person in between us just to prove a point.
I saw that.
I wasn't trying to flame some random person that just got caught in the crossfire, man.
And then the day after that, I get an IO injection before Dratnos even wakes up. Immediately tweet back the exact same shit at him.
Yeah.
But now Dratnos is murdering me, so hey, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah. Dratnos shots here up at 5,038 points now, with a huge 25 King's Rest coming in yesterday.
This is why people flame you on the competitive WoW subreddit, Dratnos.
I deserve this. Wait, do you have a link to that? Yeah.
No, it got removed, but that was really funny.
That's unlucky. Yeah. There's the person just talking about how they don't trust anything I say because I don't play the game or something.
Yeah,
yeah, it's good. Good content. Yeah, Hunter Gang though is not where Trell is going to remain though. Trell, you're back over to Brewmaster, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the waters out. Just playing with lots of different people, seeing what I want to do.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. I hope that you can get back into keys if that's like your like push keys if that's something you want.
Invite?
I want to do high keys. I just don't want to know who. I don't know what I want to do exactly with high keys. Let's put it that way.
What do you mean?
Well, I like tanking. I like DPSing. I don't like dealing with some of the aspects of tanking that much these days. Like the social aspect of having to make the group and coordinating all the stuff and, trying to like have good friendships while making a group is difficult because you're the one that's going to like invite or decline someone. And if you decide to play with some other person, then it's not the most fun thing for a tank player that enjoys also having friendships.
Yeah, that part of just WoW is difficult. You know, like 5-person groups or 20-person groups for raiding are necessarily you're going to know more than that many people who want to be in every one of those groups, and it's not, you know, it's not easy to say no to people that want to play.
Yeah, the unfortunate truth is to kind of like just forget. It's sad to say, but forget your friendships and just go for IO and play with the best players of each class. But that's not really the thing I like. I like doing it with friends.
Yep. That's the former guest of the podcast, Growl, a couple episodes ago with the hierarchy, where friendship is clearly below not just IO, but also stuff like overall damage.
Well, you see, if you do more overall DPS, then you're far more likely to make new friends.
That is definitely true. Yeah, Tettles, how's the how different is
Are they friends though?
how different is your friends list been now that you're playing Hunter compared to Boomy?
A lot more invites.
Interesting. Yeah,
Thank God.
no surprise there. You've been getting more whispers and stuff though.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think the switch you made is probably one of the biggest you could make between two different specs as well.
I would agree with that. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting utility with Hunter though. I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, Hunter is definitely there's a lot going on with that spec in like 25s, in like 20s or 15s. 15s especially, you just don't have to do like anything, and that's nice. But once you start getting to high keys, you get to this problem of like, okay, what am I supposed to do to actually live through this ability? Because I'm playing a spec that is constructed out of paper mache.
Do you play 59 in every dungeon?
Not every dungeon, no. I don't play it. I haven't played in like Toldagor, because last boss Toldagor is like kind of a pain if you're high corruption. Workshop, I have been messing around with, yeah.
Okay, and then basically every other dungeon you're playing over 40.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I've been doing too.
I think I might even start playing 59 in Toldagor though, if I can figure out a way to like pre-drop a trap on last boss.
The problem is that the thing from beyond spawns right on top of you and insta hits you.
Well, I'm gonna work with my positioning though, because like I think if you can drop a good trap.
Yeah, I think I was thinking the same thing. Like you can stand just ahead of the wall and put the trap like a pixel behind you, and I think it actually catches it if you're not directly on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the problem is you want to be like up either on the cannonballs or in that like little L-shaped part of the wall, because that will mean that any eyes that spawn on you are Z-axis. But it's still, yeah. I wonder if you have time to see the thing from beyond is spawning and then run forward and have it get trapped.
It's got a 1 second arm time.
Yeah, that's enough. Mm-hmm. For 20 more corruption, dude. I love corruption. Corruption does so much damage on that spec. It's wild.
Yeah, it does.
All right. Let's move on though to our main topic and stuff. But first, we get to thank our supporters over at patreon.com/Titanforge. Thank you for supporting our show. Paul of US Proudmore, King of Skills, VTech XD, Zuko, Ja, Drunk Swede from Legion of Lemmings, Argent Dawn EU, I Wish I Was Ratnos' Dino Pillow, Heltari, Blue of Emerald Dream, Chromed, Seraphicus, Trekkie, The Marsh Hare, Regulus, Nevernude, Chewy. How many Twitch subs does it take for Tettles to play Moonkin again in BFA? That one's probably a lot, huh? Skellies are just shadow imitations of real people like Gopher, Rude Dinosaur, Astral Recall Best Res. Can we call Voidweaver Malthier the Spider Obelisk Peter Parker instead? That one's, I think Grand Slam Gary is like actually people have been saying that, and I think that one can catch on. I don't know about Peter Parker though. Delete Yourself is my favorite Demon Hunter. Salty Sunny, Daz Boot, better mage than Tile. Brought to you by Dratnos the Excel Wizard, Brad Ceratops, Nerf I-Beam. I-Beam? Really? I wear 5 masks in public to fight the Rona. Necris knows that Trell has a secret second account where he plays Prop Paladin. Anastasia US Proudmore. Revdil. Shadow Priests can pump if you chain pull, just give them a chance. Thank you to all the supporters. And again, if you are on that list and you want your name to be something different, just type it into our Discord, that channel. And,
please ping me with it. Too.
Yeah, ping Tettles, and he maintains this list. Okay, let's move on to our tip of the week. Let's start with Trell because I've just been talking.
That's fine. Yeah. So the first clip in here is well, both these things have to do with Dread Captain Lockwood and Siege of Paralysis, the second boss. You want to maximize uptime on this boss, and you want to save cooldowns for when she's actually available to hit. And you can extend the uptime when she's available by knocking her around like this. The 2 rings of peace keep her midair and kind of perpetually prevent her from hitting the ground for 5 seconds. That's one way to prevent it by like 5 seconds. And the next way is in the second clip, and this is a clip of Nerf using the Conflict and Strife Major Essence, so he gets the Thunderstruck root every time he presses Thunderclap. And it roots her kind of like Ring of Peace does with Knock, but it also prevents her from moving for a full second. So he's timing it at the end of her cast. So the next thing she queues up has to be shoot instead of the jump. So there's multiple ways to prevent her from jumping up. A lot of people will use Knock Belts and Typhoons and Lightning, whatever it's called from Shamans. But any kind of displacement or root can do this.
Yeah, I tried to do this with Binding, and it didn't seem to work. Like, trigger her Binding, and then she still went up, even though she had that 8-second root on her.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
The real one that I'm wondering about is, can you hard cast a map, like an entangling root on them?
Oh, maybe.
Because that one, okay, so that one I think works very similar to how the Thunderclap root works. I don't think that the Binding Shot does.
Yeah, I don't know what causes her to respect or not respect certain things. I think maybe it needs to be applied at a certain time as well.
Okay, so somebody in chat says I've tried and you can't. Okay, I will accept that.
All right.
That's weird. The binding doesn't work. I'll have to figure that one out.
Yeah, I've only tried it once, so it's possible that there's a way to do it. But her being down for 8 seconds would be a huge, powerful thing to do if you could.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. My tip of the week is that if you are somebody who's out there who needs more sockets and has enough corruption, you should keep in mind that you can effectively purchase sockets with your Echoes of Ny'alotha. At a rate of about 5,000 echoes is one socket. If you do Stormwind Visions with all 5 crystals and all 5 treasure chests, if you do that, it costs you 1,750 echoes to buy a vision, and then you get 750 back at the end, so it costs you effectively 1,000 echoes to buy a vision. And each vision gives you about 5,000 corrupted mementos, so you need 5 of them to get your socket. This means that if you have all the corruption you need, or if you're farming more echoes than you need as well, you can turn them into those sockets. And that's something that a lot of characters, especially if you've been playing a lot on them, if you've been playing a lot of Mythic Plus in particular, you might have a huge surplus of echoes at this point. Or if you were smart enough to have not bought Ripple in Space rank 3 on your character and you just have been accumulating them for months before the patch even came out. Whatever. Either way, if you've got more echoes than you know what to do with, that is a way that you can still get something good out of them until you have all the sockets on your character sheet. So keep that in mind.
You can tell Dratnos is pissed whenever he says that.
Man, I hate that so much. I'm so mad.
He's so mad.
So mad.
Something that would have also made me mad is what happened to Tettles in this clip of the week.
Would you have gotten mad about this?
Well, let's see. How high is the keys? It's 25?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Let's see. Just a good old-fashioned Platinum Pummeler, no mercy for you fight in Workshop. Oh no, Tettles. What's happened there?
Tragedy, not a comedy.
Oh no, let's watch that. Let's watch that bit one more time. Oh my goodness, the one spot in the room that you could have gotten flipped into that mine. That does hurt to see.
If that was any other hunter, I thought it was me or Dratnos' hunter, we definitely would have gone like slightly off of the mine just by chance. But because he has the Tettles effect hot in action, he got sent directly into death.
It literally is that is a perfect example of the Tettles effect in action. It's like, yeah, this could happen to anyone. No, it's not like it's something that we do differently. Like, I don't look behind me and see that there's not a mine behind me when Foe Flipper's coming out. Like, that's not something I'll do if it's far enough away. I'll see it if it's in my field of view, but like, that kind of thing could happen to me too, but it doesn't because I'm not Tettles. And Tettles is just like, like those things just happen around him. It's like, do you ever see those Final Destination movies? That's Tettles. Tettles is just being, death is just looking for any little slip up and then it's just gonna, get Tettles.
Great.
Right.
End game.
Yeah. All
Great.
Right. Let's move on to our main topic. So the kind of inspiration for this one was a video that I made for the Method YouTube channel. Let's see. we'll have a link in the description, I guess, of this video / thing, and I'll just put a link in chat as well if anybody wants to either watch this now or later. You'll watch it later because we're busy with our show now, but you can see that, and it's this video here, our Dream Mythic Plus expansion on the Method channel, and basically I got free reign to write my own script for this thing and say whatever I wanted for an ideal Mythic Plus expansion.
Very handsome thumbnail as well.
Thank you. So let's get started by talking about, I guess, one of the premises was based on balancing. And my premise was that balancing in Mythic Plus should be more of a priority, and having specs, looked at, and especially the lower performing ones, not having them suck for whole expansions at a time, would be a really big improvement to the quality of life in Mythic Plus.
I definitely agree with that. And so whenever I was taking the fun and balance specs, just as a general overview, I was thinking about how is this even fixed? For me, people always offer up war mode talents for Mythic Plus. I also think that Mythic Plus tier sets could be maybe a thing as well. Do you guys have an opinion? Do you think that those are okay or not really?
I would really in a perfect world, I'd really like there to be Mythic Plus talents, and I think that would be a ton of extra work for them to do. And I don't know if that's actually realistic, but the fact that PvP has extra ways to balance classes around PvP and Mythic Plus doesn't, I think it's kind of tragic. But I don't know the best solution, honestly.
Would you be okay with complete removal of the talent system in general, and then just have Mythic Plus talents?
That's hard to say. Some classes I play, I hardly ever change talents, and other classes I change talents every dungeon. It's wildly different between specs, what's useful and what's not.
I do think that the existing talent system is not that all the good decisions about it could be put into a system like the PvP talent system, where instead of there being rows where you pick one, there's just a pool of 10 from which you pick 3.
I actually liked that more.
Yeah, I think they could do that for Raid, Mythic Plus, and PvP. I think you could open up your talent tree and it's just one side is what's active in Mythic Plus, one side is okay, what's active in Raid, and one is okay, here's your here's your PvP talents, which is basically how PvP is right now. I think that if you do that, you could basically take a look at specs that already work in Mythic Plus, and the Mythic Plus talents they have could be pretty minor things, right? It could be reducing cooldown of random utility abilities, or
your interrupt cooldown.
That's
a great example.
The interrupt cooldown thing could be a good example there of what the specs that need it could get, some way for Shadow to get 15 seconds off of silence, or 30 seconds off of silence, the base cooldown. Some way for specs like Affliction Lock to get meaningful AoE in this expansion.
Sure.
Doing that through Mythic Plus talents, I think, would be a really good way to, give specs the tools they need. And some specs, if a spec's far behind, you just buff some of their Mythic Plus talents or make them really impactful. And for specs that are already at the top, they can just have a bunch of, minor, marginal Mythic Plus talents. Same thing could be true for Raid talents, too. Raid talents, a spec like Windwalker could use a lot of talents that, make Spinning Crane Kick only hit one target, but do 300% increased damage. Part of
the problem with that, though, is that it requires a lot of iterating on a base class, and I don't think that the developers would be ready for that.
Well, but you could just there's a lot of abilities that are in the talent tree right now that if you took the talent tree out, they're now looking for a place to live.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of PvP talents are previously class abilities that were pruned, or talents that were pruned. So if you lob all the talents, then all of a sudden you now are okay, we can put Dampen Harm into the Mythic Plus talents box, and we can adjust the numbers as needed, but we have it coded already.
Sure.
Yeah.
Another thing was templating. Are you guys yay or nay on templating? I generally don't like templating. I would rather them balance the class as a whole, and fix the direct problems that they are seeking in Mythic Plus over templating. Because I feel like once you start templating stuff, you're really fragmenting portions of your game in a way that's even further than it already is fragmented. But I feel like there needs to be a nice. I feel like there needs to be like a nice like middle ground for it all,
But
and maybe templating is the correct answer.
Templating to me just removes more freedom from setting up your character for dungeons. Like I really enjoyed in Legion gear swapping. I think in this patch, if we had gear swapping, people would have a ton of fun, like making different corruption sets and having huge survivability avoidance sets for some bosses and all that. And then
Well, yeah.
if on top of that templating was also in place, like it would just be so awkward to try to build a spec around certain corruptions this patch. Like having full versatile corruption on your character, but only having 15% verse as a template would be awful.
Well, what I mean when I'm talking about templating is like, you remember like CMs.
so you're talking about
say
scaling down?
not necessarily just scaling
Right.
down, but like your gear choices don't matter at all.
Right. Yeah. So you'd say like even corruption doesn't show up. Like
Nothing matters. Yeah,
yeah. Like how Legion PvP worked.
Yes, exactly how Legion PvP worked, where no gear choices matter. You have what is effectively the same stats, the same essences. The only thing that changes is your war mode talents / just regular talents. Those are the only things that actually change from match to match potentially.
I hate that idea so much.
Explain why.
Yeah.
I think that like gear mattering is really good. I think that being able to make a decision on your gear is really good, and I think that the challenge mode stuff in general makes it not feel like a part of World of Warcraft. It makes it feel like the proving grounds, and not something that you progress with gear like you should in MMO.
I think gear is part of the fun in WoW. Personally, I definitely agree with that.
I think that gear swapping would also be bad. For the record, I don't
Really?
I don't think that it would be particularly fun this patch to have your Infinite Stars sets, your Gushing Wound set,
Your avoidance set,
your all your different Azerite sets for your 3 target Azerite, your 2 target Azerite, your 4 target Azerite, your duck and cover. You need two N'Zoth helmets as a hunter, so you've got your duck and cover helmet and your resounding protection helmet. You're swapping off rapid reload and not between every pull. Like I do not like the idea of having 20 different sets, one for each pull in the dungeon, and swapping between them for each pull with an Opie wheel. Which
that's a good point with the Azerite. I forgot about the Azerite traits. Having multiple of the same Azerite item to swap gear would be very frustrating, but I liked the corruption idea, at least personally. And like being able to swap out of active trinkets every other pull and then wearing passive trinkets in between, it was really fun.
Yeah, I mean that would
like
be
to your point.
Yeah.
That would be the incentive though. Is the problem for me is I do not want to open up a wheel and swap my gear every single pull. For me, that would be not particularly.
It's only useful
good
for us though. Like let's like speaking about a broader community, how many people would that actually affect?
Yeah, not that many. Although it would be another, like if you're adding something in the game that just buffs high end players. Those players are already buffed relative to normal players, right? Like
Sure.
you don't need another barrier to high keys, right? If you
Okay.
that's
So
not
basically,
yeah.
you're a no on templating. You're also still a no on gear swapping.
I could see some limited form of gear swapping, like 1 swap per dungeon, 2 swaps per dungeon, 1 swap per boss kill, something like that, where like you get to make
That'd be cool.
a decision once per dungeon. But for me, gear swapping is not actually, you don't actually really have a decision there. Like you just have you have an obligation then if you're a min maxer to swap every pull to the best set available for that pull, and like you also have an obligation to have 30 items in your bags or 40 items in your bags, and like you have an obligation to get somebody to trade you a N'Zoth trinket and weird ass trinkets from all kinds of bosses that you'd use for like 1 pull, and like weird Mechagon bracers that trigger when you take nature damage for boss fights with nature damage. All kinds of weird stuff.
Just saying,
Clearly
all
never played
those
Druid.
all those fire mages out there, imagine fonting before the pull, keeping the font buff, changing gear into another set, and then blasting even harder with your combust.
Font buff gets removed once you take the trinket off, please, Trell.
You sure?
Yes.
And Sephiroth didn't work that way in Legion, but okay.
Yeah, Sephiroth didn't work that way in Legion, but taking font off removes the buff. Otherwise, you just have mages pre-font before a pull, and then just like swap to a different.
Oh
trinket.
yeah, okay. I guess they may have fixed that because of raid too. Sephuz wasn't a big single target thing, but like hunters would proc Sephuz on pull on a trash pull, feign death, swap gear, and then use 2 other legendaries. So they effectively had 3 legendaries for that pull.
Yeah, feigning to swap gear would be another thing that I wouldn't be.
My thing.
I wouldn't be a huge fan of doing that every pull. Like I think for stuff like Cephas, that's like big and impactful and feels good. But like just doing that for like a 3% damage increase on the number of targets you're fighting or whatever is something that I wouldn't really enjoy. But I do think that if you could, like, if there was a tactical way to change gear once or twice per dungeon, I could be down with that. I could be able to see that being good. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the overall dungeon design, especially like now that we're kind of at the end of BFA. We have 2 expansions of M+ dungeon design to look back on, and we can see whether we moved in a good direction or a bad direction on everything from Legion. In BFA in general, most mobs have a lot more important stuff than they did in Legion, I think is fair to say. Like in Legion, most mobs had 0 to 1 abilities that were truly important. And in BFA, I'd say most mobs have like 1 or 2 abilities that are important to know about, and that can wipe you if you mess up, basically. And I think that is overall a good thing. I think overall the mobs doing stuff, and every mob doing something, except for maybe like 1 filler mob type per pack, is pretty good. How do you guys feel about that?
I think there needs to definitely strike a better balance between what is the hardest pull of the dungeon, and then what is a pretty much your droplet pull or your crab beach pull or whatever. Because not every pull should be just like a 60 mob banger. Like not every pull should be the huge group 'em up and kite style pull, or just like your initiate pull or whatever else it is, right? However, there do need to be initiate pulls in dungeons, and there needs to be like just random filler packs, because whenever you have what is probably the worst dungeon in terms of like
A tall
no
bazaar.
breaks?
King's Rest, maybe?
I think
At least
King's
for
Rest
tank and healer.
I think King's Rest is pretty bad about not having any breaks in terms of like what trash you pull. I think I would agree with that one. Like whenever you give like like a whole dungeon without any breaks, the dungeon becomes far more tedious, and it feels like you're just like slogging through the dungeon, and there's no fun part. I guess KR does still have the embalming fluid, so maybe that's still a part of the dungeon, but there needs to definitely be more parts of each dungeon that give better benefit. I think
that was what Reaping did such a great job of like always being a little bit of a breath of fresh air whenever it procced.
That's a great point, actually. Yeah, Reaping definitely did give that.
Yeah, I think that some moments of big AoE in dungeons, dungeons shouldn't all be about big AoE, but some like initiate pulls where you can do big AoE is really good. But not in Shadowlands with, most classes being target capped. That's not going to be fun anymore, because like MM Hunters
really.
So good.
I was gonna say, Dad makes a really good point in chat. It says, take the junkyard method. Casts all go on CD, whether you kick stuns, interrupt them, etc. Dungeons are 10 times better. There's a lot of mobs that just like immediately recast after they come out of a stun, and it's like, oh great, so I don't get any leeway with the stun.
Yeah, that'll definitely help a lot of the kick requirement problems for sure.
I think that let's see, fervent strike type abilities are something that BFA was full of, in addition to threat getting worse, and I think that those are not. I'd like to see them either improve tank threat or reduce the anti-kite mechanics a little bit in Shadowlands. I think that those were 2 solutions to the same problem, and having both is overkill.
I think
it's definitely overkill.
I think that tank threat needs to be like, I would fix tank threat before I would fix fervent strikes personally. Because fervent strikes are trying to prevent the tank from kiting, whereas tank threat is also trying to prevent the tank from kiting. But this expansion, I have noticed the whole expansion that they cannot strike a good balance between tanks having threat versus tanks not. Like right now, even there are so many classes that if they just look at the mobs incorrectly on pull, they just rip threat from the tank and die immediately, even after the tank has multiple thunderclaps. So say your Demon Hunter fell rushes into a trash pack, procs a Twilight Dev on pull. They can't control that, by the way. And then even though the prot warrior may be like 2 avatars deep into thunderclap, or 2 thunderclaps deep into avatar,
There you go.
the Havoc Demon Hunter just immediately rips threat and dies anyways, and you're just like, this is stupid. Is he supposed to wait even longer? Like, I think the point where you're waiting more than 5 seconds for a tank to, like, if a tank has already been hitting mobs for 5 seconds, they should not lose threat.
If they've pressed avatar on pull as well, they shouldn't be losing threat either. Like that's it's crazy to me how hard tanks have to work, especially prot warriors, right? Prot
warriors are the most capable.
Prot warriors and avatar like basically are the best of it. If prot warriors and avatar are having trouble, what are you supposed to do as a blood death knight in that spot? You're
or
like,
Vengeance Demon Hunter. Dude, okay, so Vengeance Demon Hunter, unfortunately enough for them, plays Feed the Beast instead of Fracture, so they don't press Soul Cleave very often, they just press Shear. In addition to that, they don't play Spirit Bomb, they play Gluttony. They actually just have 0 threat generation. They do less damage than a fucking healer most of the time.
Yeah, they could play a little bit of Twilight Dev, but
maintain
like,
threat?
Yeah, the Twilight Dev procs are like not reliable, you know?
The reliance on Slapper to maintain threat for them.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I mean, I completely optimized my first pull and freehold as Brewmaster yesterday. Made the whole group wait 5 seconds. Keg smashed every mob twice. Had my Breath of Fire. Like I flawlessly had all my rotation on the mobs, all 9 mobs. Fire Mage still ripped like 3 mobs off me, even though I'm fully geared Brewmaster. It's just like,
I watched Dan rip a full trash pack off of Cry 20 seconds into the pull the other day.
yeah.
It is so stupid. Like, that's a Fire Mage and a Vengeance Demon Hunter for those who don't know. But like ripping a pack 20 seconds into a pull is just absurd.
Dude, Vengeance Demon Hunters it's the worst as well, because it's like, okay, you know, you hit that thing with a shear, it does 5,000 damage, it applies Chaos Brand, your mage is now going to hit it for an extra 10,000 damage, you are now actually behind on threat for hitting that mob. It is tragic.
They need to fix tank threat. Like, if a tank is actively DPSing mobs with their rotational abilities, they should not be losing threat.
Mm-hmm.
It's really tragic. It feels so bad for the tank.
And sure, the burden should be on your DPS somewhat. I suspect if you're popping wings and just divine storming the moment a tank walks into a mob, you should probably die for that. Like, I'm not being,
especially if they don't have avatar up or whatever. Like, if it's a tank who's just like grouping mobs and has hit them all with like a heroic throw, okay, I'm fine with you losing threat.
Yes,
but like, if you are shield slamming and thunderclapping a mob, it should not like threat that you are doing the right thing against for threat purposes. Like, there's no more counterplay to be done.
Unholy DKs and Fire Mages play on Skittish every week.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
You know what's funny is that Punker reminded me of this in chat, but it's gonna get worse and worse every week. People's damage is gonna go up faster than tank threat is gonna go up still. And by the end of this expansion, like, I don't even know if I want to play my monk with fully geared DPS. Like, I just will never have threat.
just play Strength of the Warden.
Yeah, just lose a bunch of survivability.
Yeah, that the rise of Blood DK though. Blood DK can just use that essence because nothing else is good for them. There's no good essences for that spec. There's some upside. All right.
This wasn't even a problem in Legion, dude. Blood DKs could keep threat with just D&D.
Right, which, you know, like maybe that's maybe you should
that was
need
a bit
to
too
be,
far.
You should need to be like in the pull and tanking, or like have some kind of ranged threat generation like prop paladins can while they're kiting with, you know, hammers and consecration or whatever, or need like a bunch of tricks and stuff, or you need like the person who's ripping threat to invis or whatever. Like, all those things are fine. It's just being in the middle of the pack and thunderclapping needs to be enough as well. If you're doing the maximum damage that your tank spec can do, if you're doing like 100k damage, you should not be getting threat ripped off of you, and tanks do.
How do you think they fix that?
I think
they just add an aura around tanks?
Yes, I think every time you like engage with a mob or something that you do as a tank player hits the mob, you should just get like a flat percentage of threat gained, like without anything to do with the actual numbers of damage you did, because that's what current threat is. It just multiplies the DPS numbers you do to the mob and multiplies it by a certain factor depending on the ability. But like having a flat percentage threat thing while you're in melee, and then having it decay, excuse me, as you kite the pack or do something at ranged, I think would be a good way to do it.
Yeah, I think that would work as well. Okay, let's talk about mobs' abilities to be kicked, because I think that Tettles, you have something really good here in the show notes about what kind of mob is pretty rewarding as a mob with interrupts. So you have the Thorn Shapers in Waycrest Manor listed here as like an example of a mob
I
that
think I
yeah.
think the slime elementals in Junkyard are a better example that Dad posted in chat earlier, or like the lurkers in Junkyard, because those they can either be stopped or they can be kicked.
Thorn Shapers can
And
too.
yeah, well, two of the abilities from the Thorn Shaper in Waycrest Manor can, which is why I put them on the list. So the Thorn Shaper has the effigy, reconstruction, the soul fetish, and then they also have the thorn, the jagged thorn, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, and they have
I think
Uproot as well, which is also stunnable
up,
or gougeable or whatever.
yes, uproot's kind of like whatever, because uproot's not going to murder you. But the three main abilities that you have to choose whether or not you kick or disrupt are those three: effigy, reconstruction, and soul fetish. If you use a stop on them, they will not recast it. Whereas on the jagged thorn, you're going to need to kick it to be able to make it cast something else. However, with that being said, it's not going to one shot you if it goes off. And I think that's an important distinction to make. Whereas my alternative thing was Hex Priests in King's Rest. That was my counter argument. Is Hex Priests, even if you like, okay, so you can like gouge their Hex ability, and they'll recast the Hex, or you can blind the Hex ability and they can recast the Hex. But if you like, but for 80% of their cast, they're casting Spectral Bolt, and if that hits a tank one time, the tank is likely to die, and there's like really very minimal counterplay. And so there has to be a good balance of frequency of casting, how dangerous the cast actually is, and how many of those mobs are around at that point, and then basically what you can do to stop them as well. So there has to be a really good balance, and there needs to be a lot of thought put into it. Far fewer Hex Priests need to be available. Far more Thorn Shaper, Slime Elemental, Toxic Lurker style.
Slime Elemental, I think, is actually a great example, because like you can dodge the slime wave or root it or stun it or whatever. There's so many different points to counterplay against that. And also the cast you can let through and the person's not going to die, or you can kick it as well. So like there's two impactful abilities that either one can like be part of why somebody dies if you don't handle it, but also like
so let's counterplay.
Yeah, there's a million different ways to play against them, including letting them through. Whereas Respectable, it's literally just like, all right, our tank needs shield wall, or we need enough interrupts to stop every single one of these stupid things. Thorn Shapers, if I had one problem with Thorn Shaper, it's like you kind of need 3 stops on them to actually get. Like you need to assign a lot of stuff to each of them.
There's a risk reward with what can actually go through. I think generally, the effigy reconstruction, as long as you don't have a herd of dogs or a thorn guard in the pack, you can just let effigy reconstruction go through. It really doesn't matter.
If there's nothing to get healed, but like if there's stuff that's getting healed, that becomes the most important kick. Like if there's a thorn guard, that is the. And like I agree that's cool, but I do think that Thorn Shapers are a little bit too much, like a little bit too many people need to be assigned to one mob to stop it from doing stuff. Like I think the Slime Elemental is a good case where like one person can handle each Slime Elemental and like figure out what they want to do against each of its abilities, and like you can maybe even have them doing something else as well.
At least a confessor is okay too, because you can assign one person to a confessor and it's Aldazar.
As long as they're a rogue, they can you can assign one person to them.
Chain casting mobs are just awful.
Maggots and stuff in the I think the Kragmaw room is another good example where like Bloodswarmers have kind of 2 different abilities, both of which have a bunch of different ways to counterplay against them. Living Rots basically don't do anything. They're filler mobs, and then like Lashers need an interrupt. Maggots need a stop or a dodge, or one of 1,000 different stops. I think that room is a really good one, not just because like the mobs you can assign a different thing to handle each of them, but also you can just pick however much you want to pull in that room.
Yeah, so
cool.
It's good.
Lashers are on melee interrupt, and then in the room after, you have the Death Speaker, which is on a ranged interrupt, and I think that strikes a really good balance of everything. And then you have the Defiler. I don't really like the Defiler. I think again,
Defiler's a little bit too much. Like, you need 2 people hard assigned to each Defiler. I'm okay with a little bit of that though. I'm not hugely.
You need 2 melee hard assigned to each Defiler.
Right. Well, or melee and a ranged, and then you die on the 4th cast. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's the fact that you die on the 4th cast is the problem. I think it just doesn't scale well with any kind of comp out there.
Yeah, I mean, we do double Death Speaker Defiler pull with a double range comp, and you just have tank and melee on the Defiler and both range watching Death Speakers, and like that's fine. It's just the double Defiler pull is one where you need one of them to die before the 4th cast, but like even on a 25 fortified or whatever, that's not too hard of a check to make.
Yeah,
especially because you can knock for a while to delay.
They really need to think about like chain casting mobs. I think chain casting mobs are. I said rotational kick mobs is how I described it, and like what I really thought of was like the Voidweaver Malthiers.
Well, I think Voidweaver Malthier is fine because you don't fight 2 of him at once.
You can fight them with a boss though. I don't know.
Yeah, but you know you're not supposed to like that.
And what if you're not in voice?
Then don't fight him with the boss.
Don't fight him at all?
No, go fight him in his obelisk.
All right.
Like Voidweaver Malthier is like a mini boss. I think it's fine for mini bosses to like
have rotational kicks,
have that kind of test on them. I just think that like if there were packs full of mobs like Voidweaver Malthier, then okay, you know we have a problem.
Sure.
Like, but I actually don't have a problem with bosses or mini boss encounters that are hard in that way. Especially
yes.
the whole thing with like Malthier being hard with end bosses, I think is a cool way for like depending on your comp, you can fight it with the end boss or not.
So you have problems with Soul Charmers in Waycrest Manor.
Soul Charmers in Waycrest Manor, I'm a little bit.
Those are rotational kicks.
Yeah, I do think that there's a little bit much interrupts in the like the Lord and Lady room. Pull it if you pull 6 mobs there.
Yep, yeah, you have a diviner and you have 4
soul essences. Yeah, that I've found to be a little bit much, but I don't know. It is all context based. Like it just depends on what you pull with stuff and like what is reasonable to be pulled together.
What do you guys think about mobs that randomly instant cast magic damage at the nearest target?
Earth Shock? Any Earth Shockers from that's the
one drop of Grease Gun, bro.
Grease Gun is fizz, right? That's okay. Physical, dodgeable.
Okay, well, yeah, same thing.
What's the peasant? Withering Glob?
Yeah, Withering Glob. Yeah. I learned about Withering Glob for the first time a couple weeks ago, actually. I didn't know that was a mechanic.
What's the Tempest one?
Gale Shear.
Gale Shear.
Yes, I love
Shrine of the Storm.
Yeah, those are my favorite mechanics. The ones where somebody dies to it and they're just like, what is this mechanic on my death log? I have played this game for a year and a half, and I did not know this was a mechanic because nobody casts it. Nothing I can do against it except for like having my tank, you know, not be kiting or whatever.
It's not even like it's a.
And
it's
sometimes
not even like the protected cast that you can see who it's going on. It's a fucking invisible cast.
Earthshock, yeah, Earthshock is the worst. That one I think might be the most egregious. Maybe Grease Gun. Maybe Grease Gun is the most egregious, but it's so annoying.
Those are beyond me. Like, why don't just at least add a cast indicator or something that's showing you it's about to happen, so you can.
It could be a protected cast.
Yeah, like Throw Rock, right?
Right, exactly.
Make it a 3-second protected cast that you can pre-defensive. Like, literally, that's all it has to be.
Pre-defensive, or like, you know, run away out of range or whatever, or like stun the mob so it recasts on somebody else. Like, all of those would be fine by me.
They cast Grease Gun through a stun.
That's true. The Grease,
yeah, that's true.
Or like there are other hard CCs as well. You can just see the thing like in a freezing trap or whatever, and just the gun just appears in its hand, and then somebody dies, and then the gun disappears from their hand, and they're just not moving. They're totally standing still in their stupid stun or whatever, just gunning people down out in the streets of Motherlode. It's brutal.
Yeah, the non-intuitive stuff about dungeons like that is what really gets me. I really wish it was easier for people to step into these dungeons and understand what's going on. And like, why did my friend just die? I don't know, unless I have knowledge on how to look in this death log add-on I have. And then you have to track that to whichever mob you're in combat with, and you're like, oh, I guess this guy randomly does this ability without saying anything.
It's just another one of those things where like if you're new to Mythic Plus, this is why it's hard to get into Mythic Plus groups, right? It's because like you just don't know about Grease Gun, and you're trying to get into a plus 22 key or whatever where the Grease Gun starts to really matter, and like, you know, if you just don't know what's happening with it, you're standing next to that mob as a mage or whatever, and you're getting killed, and everybody's just like, you should have known this. And you're like, how am I supposed to have known this? Nothing prepared me for this. You know, I unlike every other Mythic Plus mechanic, I didn't learn this in Mythic 0. You know, I didn't get to practice this or see it anywhere. It's just invisible. Yeah, I hate those. That's a good call. All right, let's talk a little bit about reward structure in Mythic Plus. So I think that this was another big point in my video, but basically there should be more support for Mythic Plus in terms of rewards by Blizzard, ideally. So
I agree with that.
um, I don't necessarily think that you need your best gear or anything to come from M Plus. I do think that you should at least be able to reasonably push Mythic Plus without feeling an obligation to get raid gear or PvP gear. And I think that that's true for raid and PvP as well. I think that all 3 points in the game, you should be able to focus just on one of those things and not be more than a couple percentage points behind somebody who does the other stuff as well. I do think it's fine for there to be a couple of percentage points available by doing everything, but I think if it's more than that, then it starts feeling like you can't just do Mythic Plus or just raid or just PvP. And I think that you should be able to do just those things.
Big agree on that.
I think, though, that for rewards, it would be really nice to see mounts, transmog, titles. If you think about the level of support that PvP gets every season, right? PvP gets like 3 transmog sets per armor type, 2 mounts or whatever, a bunch of titles, and all those things, right? That Mythic Plus gets. Mythic Plus hasn't gotten any of those until this season, actually, where we got 1 title and 1 mount, right? For 15s and for 10s, all of those in time.
I think that the problem with me is not that they have the 15 like title mount achieve. I think that's a great thing to have in the game, right?
Yeah.
I think the fact that there is nothing, like there's no allure to push higher is the problem for me.
Give me, transmog set that you unlock parts of from doing all the 16s in time, and then doing all the 17s in time, 18s, 19s, and 20s, and like, the 20s get you the shoulders appearance or whatever, and the cloak, and that's the prestigious one, and the like doing all the 16s in times gets you the belt and the bracers. It's just like PvP, right? Where you slowly unlock those elite appearances as you get the rating up. Yeah, that's I think something that would be cool to see implemented.
I think a seasonal title like okay, so right now they've changed gladiator titles. Basically, if you're over 2400 in threes, you have the elite character, the elite druid, the elite shaman, the elite whatever, if you're over 2400. And then if in addition to that, if you get 50 wins at over 2400 what is it, rating, then you get a gladiator title and you get a gladiator mount. And then if you're in the top 0.01% at the end of the season, then you get what is this season? Like the corrupted gladiator title. And then you have that title for the rest of time, but you lose that temporary gladiator title and that temporary the elite class.
Right, those are temporary titles, yeah.
Yeah, those are temporary titles. Whereas the top 0.1% one stays. And that would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'd be fine with temporary titles and, a very high cut to a permanent title in Mythic Plus as well. I'd be fine with permanent titles, more of them as well, or even just the top ones being temporary as well. I'd be fine with all that. I just think that something.
I think there needs to be a lure to it. I think that there needs to be like a goal and a reason for pushing higher aside from Raider IO score. Like
right.
Raider IO score is sick, but like,
and aside from 3 months of Raid Bots Premium or whatever, your whatever the current bounty is for that first plus 30 time.
All right. Okay, I don't want to.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, because that is 100% community given out.
Mm-hmm. Like I agree. I'm definitely not trying to flame. I'm just saying that like Blizzard needs to make it so there is more than that. So that there's some big rewards associated with playing the game, especially for playing Mythic Plus at a high level, like there is for Raid and PvP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, there is. It's called the MDI, but the
MDI is so different.
Okay, actually, let me rephrase. I think part of the problem too is that there's no legitimate in game for people who don't want to compete in the MDI for Mythic Plus.
And the set of people who do like top level laddering and top level Arena World Cup is pretty much the same set of people, right? Like.
This is the same thing.
Those are the same thing. People like Zalia and Lighty do not do Mythic Plus on live servers, right? Like they do not push keys at all. That's not what they do, because they win MDI tournaments all the time, but they don't play live keys because it's two different things, right? Like MDI and live keys are far enough apart that it's not really, you can't really be like, well, live keys, there's a good reason to do them. The MDI is like that track. It's like they're slightly different tracks.
Yeah.
Hey, they're definitely different skill sets. You see, like now go and win MDI and then also get rank 1 on live, but that's because he's done both for a long, long time. Like he's just good at both different skill sets. Same thing with Nerf. There's a few others that do it too, but it's pretty rare to see a really good team that does both.
Yeah, I would say it translates well to tanking.
I do think that most of the people that, like, if you win an MDI, or if you're in Method NA or Method EU or like one of those top 4 teams, and you're not currently a live key pusher, you probably could be very, very quick. Like the thing is that there's just like the desire to do both those things. The desire to be a high key pusher is an important part of it. Yeah.
Lighty is one of the most insane players. Zalia too. Those guys are just wild players, and so is Swagfist, another really good example of somebody who just doesn't push keys on live. Divine hasn't pushed keys since Legion. All of those guys, if they wanted to, could be just top ladder performers. Like they may not be better than what Nerf and now are currently, but they would definitely give them a run for their money. They are insanely good players.
Yeah, they are. I loved when Divine played in season 1 and he streamed. That was a good time.
They got World First 15.
People a few months ago were saying the same thing. The same argument was being made with now as like well, he's a top level M pluser. Why is he so far behind on the live ladder? And the answer is just he hadn't been pushing. That's the important thing as well. It's just actually having a desire to push. Yeah.
I saw come back lately. Lapon.
Ooh.
Yeah, he was playing Shelly earlier. They were doing like 24s. That guy was a freakishly good player in Legion.
Yeah, he'll be back soon. He'll be a top tier tank very quickly, I think.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about affixes. This is something that we've talked about a lot. My big point, I had suggestions for changing most of the affixes, bolstering and explosive, or what, in addition to actually infested and beguiling, but obviously those aren't here anymore, are affixes that I would describe as like exhausting affixes that when they're active during the week, it's just hard to be motivated to play a lot of Mythic Plus that week, because like you're kind of just like, more bolstering keys, like this is such a pain. More explosive keys.
I think that exhausting is the best way of describing those, because they're so polarizing for how the dungeons work. I think there either needs to be uniformity, like every set of affixes needs to be some level of exhausting, and they need to be on the same row, or they need to all be skittish, volcanic-esque in the fact that they're just kind of a joke. I have a pretty big problem with Grievous and Bursting, because those are so relative to healer power as well. Currently, we're playing a game where healer power is incredibly high, and healers are able to heal through, I don't even know, probably a 20 stack of Bursting and be okay. They're able to heal through Grievous Volcal. In Season 1, they couldn't heal through 7 stacks of Bursting without somebody probably dying. So that's always going to be related to healer power. So there needs to be a real strong look at HPS relative to health pools in regards to how those affixes work.
Bursting as well as like, okay, this does more DPS in a plus 10 than it does in a plus 25. Like, what is going on with this thing, right? Like,
yeah, that's a very strange interaction.
It's like 80% of the group's damage taken in a plus 10 is going to be bursting, and it's like 10% in a plus 25 or something. It's wild.
Yeah.
I had a friend ask me how to deal with bursting as a pro warrior the other day, and he was doing like 15s, I think, for echoes. And I was like, well, you have to either use shield wall or a Nazal trinket to live like a big stack, most likely. But I was telling him it's actually just easier the higher you go, because you only get it every couple minutes, like a big stack of bursting at least. And in 15s, you probably get it like maybe once a minute in some dungeons.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. All right. Let's move on to talking about 2 other affixes, and this was a video made by Tettles. So here's Tettles' YouTube. Should Tyrannical and Fortified be removed? A 35-minute discussion video with friend of the podcast Squishy. You can see here on my thumbnail, I made it through about 10 minutes of this. I'll be honest, I cheated. I skipped ahead as well for bits. And then I got bored and stopped watching, but I did make it through almost 10 minutes, so I feel like I do deserve some credit for that.
Good job, Darnos.
Yeah. I'll watch more of it later. But
you don't need to. We're about to cover
the thing is, yeah, we do have this discussion a lot, but I feel like we haven't had this discussion in at least a couple episodes. So we can once again go back to talking about how stupid Tyrannical is. Tettles, do you wanna I guess have the opening salvo here?
Finally articulated why Tyrannical and Fortified are bad. I think I finally have been able to figure it out. Why I think that they're just utterly terrible. Because I feel like there's just like a lot of different things. But it's been very blatant this season to notice differences between Fortified and Tyrannical, even more so than other seasons. It's like there's always going to be one that's better. Just because that's the nature of how affixes work. There's always going to be some that are easier and some that are harder. So I guess we can start with the reason that Tyrannical and Fortified exist. And it's to make the weeks feel different. 1 week is supposed to make trash feel more impactful. And 1 week is supposed to make bosses feel more impactful and feel like raid bosses. And that's supposed to be on a different week, on a week-to-week rotation. And I think that the week-to-week rotation is probably what I have the biggest problem with. Because at least with other affixes, you don't get them every other week. Or at least with the seasonal affix, you get that every single week, right? So that's either ever present or it's present 2 out of the 12-week cycle. But with Tyrannical and Fortified, they're both represented 6 out of the 12 weeks, each one. And I think that is a major, major misstep with how both of those function.
Yeah, I think that Tyrannical and Fortified, the fact that it's always flipping between them means that every single week you're thinking about the fact that it's either Tyrannical or Fortified, right? Like that, you can never really escape them. Whereas like you can escape most of the other affixes, and not have them be at the center of your mind. Yeah, yes. I don't know. I feel like historically, have there ever been that? Have there been seasons where Tyrannical has actually been the better one? Like season 1 of BFA was the closest, right? But even then, okay, so we can take a look here at the top of those scoreboards. Like, yeah, the top key was a Tyrannical key, but the front page is like 50-50, right? It's 50-50 between Tyrannical and Fortified, which is a good mix. So I think that Tyrannical and Fortified were probably healthy in season 1. Every single other season, though, the top keys are all Fortified. Every other season, including the Legion seasons that I could find.
So I think part of the problem too, with season 1 specifically, is that 1, tank power was pretty bad, so Tyrannical had more appeal, and number 2, infested meant that you were spending a way longer time on trash relative to the dungeon. Right now, we probably don't spend that much time on trash relative to the dungeon timer, and we haven't for a hot minute at this point. But in season 1, dude, you had to like CC mobs to be able to get infested out of a pack, and then you like merge 2 random packs, except for the 2 infested mobs that you had CC'd off to the side, and then you do those 2 infested mobs together, and it's just like,
oh yeah, Fortified also made the Kahunis stronger as well, right? So they had more health and stuff. That was nice. Yeah.
Fortified was really hard. I think the healing throughput just wasn't there to like keep the tank alive through the Fortified packs. Like you could stand it for 3 seconds, try to tank, and then you had to run basically.
Okay. Another major dilemma too is that the delta between how quickly AoE scales versus how quickly single target damage scales is not really there. Like, and a lot of classes scale on vastly different curves on AoE than other classes, whereas single target is a very known damage profile. You can check and see most classes are within like 5 to 10% of one another on single target damage on like a patchwork sim. It's all very, very close on single target. Whereas on AoE, dude, some class may actually do twice as much damage. And then you're just like, I don't really know how to fix that.
Yeah, it's I think that's okay. Let's talk a little bit about solutions potentially to the Tyrannical Fortified thing. I think that my suggestion has always been to just lob both of them and start fresh. maybe we don't even need that kind of weekly, 2 affixes, one of which is active every week, rotating thing. But if we do, turning fortified into reaping has always been what I wanted. Ever since reaping went away, tyrannical I have is a harder one harder nut to crack for sure.
So I've seen a lot of different feedback on that video. Some of the feedback involved giving tyrannical bosses an additional mechanic. I didn't love that because I felt like giving tyrannical bosses an additional mechanic is just another barrier to entry of just knowledge of how to deal with that mechanic in a dungeon. I think that Squishy had a really good suggestion of like, so we have the lieutenant mobs that spawn with the final boss of dungeons right now if you don't play an obelisk. On Tyrannical, you could just have a lieutenant mob spawn, like some very, I don't know, Shadowlands specific lieutenant mob spawn with a final boss of an instance, and that's how you deal with Tyrannical.
Yeah, I could see. So I was thinking about Tyrannical as an end boss thing as well, because I was thinking about one of the things I felt like last week is I actually enjoyed the Tyrannical feeling to some extent. Like I enjoyed the the feeling of the boss fight, especially like actually I enjoyed King Mechagon being like a epic challenge in a 6-minute boss fight, and like I actually had a lot of fun dealing with that. What I don't have fun dealing with is like going into a 30-minute dungeon and knowing that I need to spend 25 of those minutes fighting bosses, and like I'm therefore hugely up against the wall timer wise. But I do think that there is space for like one of the boss encounters in the dungeon being hard and being like really a slog. So
I think boss HP actually needs to be normalized. I think it's just like so varied because you have Priestess Lindsay who murders herself versus King Mechagon, which is a 5.5 minute fight. And
right. What if Tyrannical though just applied to one boss per dungeon and like it gave them more health than it currently does? It's just or even the same amount roughly, and it's just like, all right, in Workshop it's King Mechagon, and King Mechagon just becomes this like the huge focal point of the dungeon. Is a huge challenge, and like you get there with 9 minutes and you're like, all right, let's gear up and give this, pull this boss, and it has that kind of raid boss type feel to it. And then in Atal it could be like Yasma or Volcall even, or whatever. It could be not the end boss in every dungeon even.
The only problem with that one, I think, is they'd have to make that one boss so long to make up for the time gained by not having to fight fortified trash, that I think it would be like a 9-minute Yasma, for example, or something, because everything else in the instance would go by really fast.
Well, that's why I think HP is the wrong thing to be changing. I think damage is like okay.
Well, but you need to add some HP to make it comparable to all the HP that's getting added with fortified, for example, or reaping.
No, you take it from both.
Oh, you neither scales HP? Okay, I'd be fine with that. Yeah.
Only damage would be okay, I think, in my mind. It would, but the current dungeons, I think that would work. I don't know about Shadowlands, but
so with the current dungeons right now, the only thing that needs to be added is like a timer band-aid, but that's like a very gross band-aid fix for how everything works. Like right now on Tyrannical, if Tyrannical was active, you got, I don't know, 2 minutes longer on every dungeon. That would probably fix everything, right?
Yeah, maybe. It depends on the dungeon, but yeah, a little bit of time on the timer for Tyrannical would, like, I don't think there's too many like impossible bosses this patch, because players are just so powerful that, like, especially with corruption, you can put avoidance on or whatever if you need to survive Overseer Korgus up to a pretty high level.
I think a good middle ground would be to keep Tyrannical how it is. I think it's just more realistic, but keep Tyrannical how it is, but tune the bosses that have long intermissions to be less impacted by Tyrannical, like the Dread Captain Lockwood. Make it so she only has 10% more health rather than the actual number, just as like a flat fix for some bosses.
Yeah, I'd be in to see boss specific tuning. Yeah. All right. Let's maybe move on to some question and answers at this point, unless Tettles is there. I know we're skipping through some of this stuff, so if there's anything currently on the sheet.
Do you think Tyrannical and Fortified is a Raider IO scoring issue?
I do think also just if you separated your Tyrannical score from your Fortified score, that would maybe be another way to encourage you to play on Tyrannical weeks and not make it feel as bad.
Do you think it's a purely scoring issue though?
No.
I feel like to me, just the delta between Tyrannical and Fortified is too large. Like 25 being the highest Siege of Borealis done on Tyrannical versus 28 on Fortified. Feels like a lot.
Is 25 really the highest siege done on Tyrannical?
Yes, it was you guys. It was actually Dratnos shots.
Oh my god. Yeah, there it is. Wow. Dratno shots.
That's a prime example of the intermission boss or phase boss.
Okay, and that was the other two affixes, which are bursting and skittish, are arguably easier than the bolstering, the current bolstering grievous ones for Siege of Borealis. I would even say.
Well, yeah, bolstering. Bolstering is a
fundamentally play the
polarizing
game
affix in Siege. It's stupid. That's another thing we could complain about if we wanted to, for sure. But yeah, I do think that just separating the score would go a long way though to like making it so that at least there's some relevant. There would be some reason to play on Tyrannical weeks. Like it wouldn't solve the whole problem, but I do think it would do a lot of it as well. All right, let's move on to some questions and answers. Let's see. That one we could talk about this one. Can Tyrannical be salvaged by reducing just the size of the modifier that it gives to 20% or something? I think this could be. I think that this that you could tune your way out of Tyrannical being a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I
agree.
I think it would require constant tuning, but again, there's always going to be one that is the best.
Right.
I think if they're closer though, that would make it.
Yeah, like there could be a pretty easy range where they're like within a key level of each other, and that's Whereas right now it's like a 3 key level difference in a lot of dungeons. Siege is a great example, right? Where 28 Fortified's been done, and 25 Tyrannical has.
I do just want to backtrack for 1 second. Somebody said, but score is a community-made problem in chat. Score is a community-made problem, but whenever you have like major disparities between like a week to week in terms of like how the dungeons are to be done, that doesn't feel that great. In addition to that, let's be real here. Saying that you did a 28, which is the world first Siege of Borealis versus, oh, my friend Dratnos has the world first Tyrannical Siege of Borealis on this random affix set. There's a difference there, right?
Also, score only exists because Blizzard literally hasn't given us anything else to fill that vacuum. Like Blizzard doesn't just get absolved of responsibility for it's a community created incentive because they don't have an alternative in place. So until such a time as Blizzard gives us something, we get to complain about the fact that there's nothing there.
Pretty much the entire premise of all these things we're talking about is we wish there was more attention to the minor details in Mythic Plus of anything to do with balance.
Okay, next question. Do you guys think expansion systems are made bad? This is a huge U-turn in topic, by the way.
Oh yes, I don't know. It was a good question on Twitter. I was like, oh, may as well talk about it.
Do you guys think that expansion systems are made bad, like covenants, Azerite's essences, legendaries, so that they will intentionally iterate them over time until X.3.5, where they give people what they want way too late? Pattern becoming hard to ignore. Do you guys think it's a conspiracy?
Intentionally poorly? Yeah. No, I think that they don't have enough testing and enough data to understand why something will be bad until it comes out, and they are like, "Oh shit, this is bad."
I agree. I don't think that they are intentionally shipping these systems bad. I do think that there are some core mistakes that they keep running into that they have not yet figured out how to like not make those mistakes. Like there's a kind of way that people play this game that I don't think they predict that people will play this game, which is like, it's gonna feel bad to not have your legendary. It's gonna feel bad to like grind your essence this way. It's gonna feel bad to have to swap your covenants or to not be able to swap your covenants and just suck at 2 of your 3 specs and 2 of the 3 main ways to play this game. Potentially, like
I think it's just how much like attention to detail and like how much like testing and tuning and reiterating on systems that they just do before the system is released. And then once the system is released and you open up the gates and you like release the whole entire new expansion, then you get all of the testing that you're ever going to get, but it's too little too late in that regard, right?
There's also been a bit of stubbornness from them, like the account-wide essences thing. People were saying that for a long time, and they reacted pretty sluggishly to it.
That's definitely true.
Corruption
vendor. Oh my god!
like if they had been a little bit less stubborn from the start, from PTR, they could have come out of the gates with a system like that we have right now, and that would have been so much better. It seems like there's some interest in doing this in Shadowlands, but the thing is, they say this superficially, right? Like, they talk about how they're going to take all this feedback and stuff. We've seen no action or any words to me that are comforting on the Covenant front. Like, pretty much as soon as as soon as the Covenant systems were announced and spoiled and stuff, we came out with like this list of why Covenants are going to be are hugely concerning, and Blizzard has basically just said for the past year now, oh, we're listening to community feedback, we're taking all this into account, we're going to act quickly here, and we have seen no movement on Covenant. So I think there is good reason to be concerned about this. I think
what's weird to me? The
What?
fact that they, at BlizzCon, they announced that they wanted to reiterate on classes and how classes felt and class design and everything like that. I feel like a lot of classes feel the exact same coming into Shadowlands.
I do think there's been some good, like, on class design. I think there's been a lot of good stuff in the past week. Like, a huge...
In the past week, I think that's the last class tuning patch that we're getting. The class change patch. I bet they start tuning classes now. Because they have started, like, buffing and nerfing things in recent times. But now they, like, I think that is the last couple of classes to be changed.
Maybe.
Yeah, you could be right. I'm not sure.
I think there's still some experimenting that can happen with the classes. I don't know. I'm not doom and gloom about that. I'm really just doom and gloom about the Covenant system. That is the thing where it seems to me like they have backed themselves into a corner where they're just unwilling to make it the good system it could be, because it goes slightly against the vision they had.
Okay, so
like they're just attached to the idea.
They are unmoving.
Yeah.
Say that they are unmoving on, like, this has to be the way it is because of RPG elements, right? And they want you to actually make a strong, like, decision. What do you think the best solution is? Say that they are unmoving on it.
Right. I mean, the best solution is just we're gonna have to suck it up, and we're gonna have to, like, play our raid Covenant and then play our Mythic Plus Covenant after progression, and like not play two specs on the same character. I'm like, okay. I feel like I don't think there's a way to design themselves out of this without being willing to budge on the premise.
I think they spread themselves really thin too. That they designed an entire new video game that adds on to a previous set of long-running video games, and there's so many new systems and challenges to that the developers don't have the time or capability to like go over these fine-tuning details that we talk about in this episode. And I feel like honestly, Torghast looks great, but I wish they would spend a lot less time on it and allocate a lot of that time and effort into other things.
I love that every patch we get, like, or like I'll read the patch notes on Wowhead for stuff that's being added into the alpha. It's just a bunch of fucking Torghast stuff, and I'm just like, where's the rest of the game?
I know, same.
I don't know. There's been a lot of like talk about this on Twitter from people like they're like, stop designing Torghast, but like
I don't think they should stop designing Torghast. I think they should be like.
They're doing that though.
They said that they wanted Mythic Plus to be released early. Like, where the fuck is Mythic Plus? They said that. Okay, they said that Shadowlands is coming out in Q4 of 2020. We are less than half a year away from Shadowlands being released. We still don't have any raid testing. We don't have any Mythic Plus testing. We are literally just what is it? 3 dungeons out right now?
Yeah, there's like not even half the dungeons are out, let alone Mythic Plus. Like we're a long way away.
Holy shit! I haven't seen the fucking seasonal affix. There's so much. Like, they've recently given you all of your classes Covenant abilities to be able to test. Man, Q4, that is a short time frame for this.
Yeah, I think it could all come together. I personally like. I don't like saying like, oh, the fact that like stop working on Torghast or whatever, like a lot of high level raiders have been tweeting about. I don't think that's I don't feel like it's a fair attack here. Like it looks like there's also movement happening on class changes. Like, and I think that it's pretty likely that these are different teams as well involved in all these things. Like the person designing anime or the people designing Torghast are probably not the people designing classes or Mythic Plus. So I don't think it's
the people designing classes are different than the people who are designing Torghast. That is correct.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some overlap with these systems, though.
I think that the people who design Torghast are the people who do dungeons and raids, though.
Okay, yeah. So in that case, like you could make an argument that more resources should exist in these other things, but like I don't know. I do want Torghast to be good. Like I want
Yes.
If they're gonna make it, it should be good. It shouldn't be like Island Expeditions.
Okay, to be fair, they fixed a lot of the problems that were
Yeah.
present with Torghast. Like, what was it, like 2 weeks ago, I think?
I mean, they've been iterating on it. The torments came in, the torments went out, and that seemed, or the time-based part of the torments went out. Seemed good to me. Maybe they bit off more than they can chew with Torghast, but it's definitely better than delivering a half-baked Island Expeditions 2.0 vertical islands in Torghast.
Vertical Islands. Okay.
Yeah, miss me with that. All right.
It's true. Torghast looks good. Even though it's designed by the same guy that designed Toldagor, it's looking pretty good.
Yep. Bigger staircases. That's the most important thing that Toldagor has needed all along, was just more room between each floor. And a full loading screen between each floor is all we need. That's enough.
Yep, an underworld.
Mm-hmm. All right. Shift brings up an interesting point about dungeon checkpoints existing and also giving you a codex type object to change gear. I think this could work as well, where like once per boss you get a resting area to change your gear in. Although I'd caution that, like, if it was just unlimited uses, as long as you go back to where the boss died, you would just see teams pulling everything back there, killing it all, and then swapping their gear again. And that I don't think that would be good play. But like, after you kill a boss, if you get a tome buff for 30 seconds, that could work.
That'd be cool. Yeah, I would like some extra freedom, just whatever. I just like customizing my character and maxing it.
All right, Dettles, do you want to read our last question?
No. Let's let Trell read that.
All right, Trell.
Kavais in Twitch chat says, also, can I get a "Let's Bro" from one of you guys? My mom is fine at home, but she would be even better if you said it. Hope you enjoyed that.
All right. And on that note, that's going to be the end of our show here for today. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. We'll be back next week with another one. Later.
See you guys.